Hi, I'm Chris Nedza, Lead Entrepreneur in Residence of the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech. We're the state of Georgia's technology incubator. Welcome to Season 1 of the ATDC podcast, Executive Bytes. We focus on the startup founders in our portfolio, what sparked them to launch their companies, the market problem they solved, and even how they overcame the thoughts of quitting when times get rough. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to this episode of Executive Bytes. This is probably going to be the most unusual, and don't tell the others, my favorite. This is going to be my favorite. And here's why. This is super important to us at ATDC, but we have General Alan Lynn, retired, but still the man in the know. And co-hosting with me is General Jan Norris. So generals, what the heck are generals doing in an entrepreneur village like ATDC? We have about 170 companies in our portfolio and all kinds of different industries. And they're going from ideation to raising capital to scale. And they're in the grind, if you will, grinding it out every day, trying to get the next customer, trying to do their thing. There is a tremendous market in the Department of Defense that as a founder led company, I've done several of them. I never one time thought about going to the Department of Defense because I just thought that it would be too big. I would not be able to, get through the walls, and I would die before I got any kind of business. So you guys have something different to say about that, and that's what this is about. So General Lynn.
Yes.
I also want you guys to know that from my perspective, you guys are not what I expected. You guys can't see this, but they're both about 6'3" to 6'4". You're probably 6'4".
6'3.5", but
it's 6'3.5".
Close.
I'm 6'7" minus 7, but but they're funny and they're engaged and they really have some. A lot more knowledge than I thought you would about what it's like to be in the trenches here. So, just give a quick background of your work history and just kind of like what you've been doing, and then we're going to dig into the fun stuff.
Okay. Well, I had a fairly long career in the Department of Defense, and I did start out with air defense artillery, so shooting down aircraft. And
thank you for your service.
I got excited I did some nuclear weapons, and I got really excited about the tech side of the house.
So you're actually serving. In the military, then you moved up into administration. Is that kind of what happened, or what happened?
No, so you got to understand the difference, I guess, in IT and the military and IT and other places. So IT in the military, you're going to some place where there's probably been a lot of devastation, and you've got to build a whole network from scratch. So from fiber to satellite to cellular, any kind of technology that you need in a specific warfight, you're building it from scratch, including power generation. So it's a little bit different. So you're not really administrative, you're actually building technology.
So you guys would get deployed and your team would rebuild a city or a town, or?
Well, in my case, at one point in my career, I was deployed to Iraq right after the initial
Operation Desert Storm.
Right. Right after that, you're essentially in a country that's been bombed, and I was given the country of Iraq. Said, "Here, build all the communications." Like, who gets that deal?
You got the whole country. He got the whole country.
The whole country. It's like, here's the country of Iraq. You're responsible for all communications. Build it all out. And I was like, okay. Oh, by the way, you have 6 months.
Okay, I just have to sidebar this question. I'm just wondering. I'm sitting here thinking about what culturally was that like. Were you? Wow, this is awesome, thank you for doing it, or, what was that like?
I mean, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Who actually gets to, get that kind of a challenge? I thought it was fantastic because not only did I have to build out the tactical systems, I had to build a commercial system with it and then have it figure out how to make them work together. So for me, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for being here, coming down. I know it's been 7 years since you took the uniform off, and for everyone listening, he was the global director of the Defense Enterprise Systems Agency in charge of the White House Communications Agency.
Wow.
$1 billion enterprise, was in charge of the Army's network enterprise globally. And so since you've taken off the uniform in the space of what we do here at ATDC, and you think about those startups, as Chris said, who, DOD, like, do I even have anything?
Do I have a shot?
Yeah, do I have a shot to get through the Valley of Death? Do I have a shot to compete with these large contracting companies who seem to have the grip on getting business and what I can compete with those giants? And so what's been your perspective since you've taken off the uniform in this space, and what are some of the pitfalls that you find that these companies fail or fall down on as they try to work with DoD?
Well, that's a lot. I would say, well, first of all, the really neat thing is that I transitioned out of the military, and then I became an engineer again, but I was a VP of engineering doing innovation. Right. So I'd always done innovation, building new technologies inside of DoD. And then I was on the commercial sector doing the same thing, but building little companies and startups inside of a company, a larger corporation.
Yep.
Probably the pitfalls, you talked about pitfalls. The first thing is just centering your idea of what it is. So DoD is not a company.
Right.
It is closer to a country. So there's 3,600,000 military civilians and contractors all in a place, and they have their own culture. So, we're here in Georgia, but that's the same size as a country called Georgia. So you're coming into, think of it more of a country. So it's massive, right?
Yeah.
The network you talked about that I was in charge of is about the third largest network in the world.
Yeah.
So it's multi-classifications and it's global. So it's a different kind of space, and understanding first off that they want innovation. There's letters going out everywhere that says we want innovation. They set up innovation hubs actually in California to see new technologies because they really want new capabilities, new technologies, and so they have that already kind of built in. They also have a requirement for getting small businesses. So there's a small business set aside, and I had a $10 billion annual spend in IT equipment, and I always did a set aside for small business, and somewhere around 30% of my business I tried to make sure they were small business.
That's a big chunk. That's $3 billion.
That's a big chunk, right? So, think through that. So the opportunity exists.
Did you have a hard time finding companies? Like, so go back to your side. Like, I would imagine it's just hard to find companies, or was it hard?
Well, it was hard to find companies because they don't think of the Department of Defense as being a place to go.
Right.
Similar to what you talked about. So it was kind of hard to dig through and find it. And then once you found companies, there was the scale issue. So now I have subscribers, but I don't have 200,000 subscribers. I got 3.4 million subscribers. So making sure that
you caught the bumper.
So congratulations, you've got in the door. But now we've got to build it to scale, right? But the other neat thing is the military is very focused. So your customer, the people that you're working with, are very focused because a lot of times the technology that they're looking at. They're looking at it through the eyes of somebody who's thinking of a 911 system. So when you're looking at DoD, you got to think 911 because your life depends on the technology working well. Because ultimately, you're helping somebody that's in a war fight, and their life depends on the technology that you provide.
Good.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that. In other words, you better not have vaporware coming to, right?
So they'll sniff out vaporware really quickly. And when you do your demo, make sure it works.
I think, do you guys actually, like if I were giving my technology to you and pitching you, and you told me that there were lives depending on it, I'd probably be a little bit more careful at that time. Do companies, I just wonder, do they hear that from you all?
I think once they're in and they really get to work with the people within the DoD, they start understanding that this is important. The work that you're doing is not just, you're making money, sure, but you're making a difference. You're making an impact, and you've got people that have a very, very close eye on what you're doing, and it's a collaboration. And the other thing to understand is it's teamwork. So when you're in the Department of Defense, it's not, I'm going to go pitch to this one person who's going to make a decision. That's another thing that people kind of mess up on. They're like, I'm looking for the person that's going to make the decision. It's not the way the DoD works. It's a team. So you grow up as a team. So there's a team working on something. So you got to find the team and work with the team, and they want you to be successful. So they're going to give you good feedback on how you can make this better, because ultimately their life depends on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Holy cow! I've never thought about it. Why wouldn't I think about it? They're defending our country. Their lives are depending on it. Yeah.
All right. So, sir, as you think about emerging technologies, like are there, and I know you're in the cyber IT space, when we think about the landscape globally, what's going on in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, what are some of the top or emerging capability gaps that you could talk to our listeners about that may be out there trying to solve that gap? And again, listening to us may say, hey, well, maybe I do have a capability for DoD that I didn't think I did before.
Well, again, you think of the scale. So it's like you're asking me, what can I do for a country?
Yeah, right.
And think of all the different spaces that there's in. So everything that DoD is massive. So there's so many different places you could go. I could talk about data. There is years and years and years of data in all different flavors that if we could figure out a way to simulate it all in a way that it could be read and understood, and have an AI overlap on top of that. I mean, that would be phenomenal. It could just be even something simple like building a framework that allows the same GUI they've been using for the last 20 years, but have a updated background for it that brings all those pieces together. And then it's very powerful because you've got all this data with all this information, and now we've been able to make sense of it. And it's across essentially a country, if you think about it that way.
I mean, that's awesome. You actually asked a question about like what's futuristic almost. But when you were asking that, I was thinking, do you have to be futuristic to solve problems that there are? And you just laid it out. No, I mean, there's actually like use future technologies or the things that's coming up with AI and data management to kill that or solve that pain of data management.
Right. There's a lot there. I mean, there is a lot there.
Yeah. You know what? We've got a company called Magic Data here at ATDC, and I'm going to make that guy Pav. He's going to listen, and he's going to be calling you.
Bring a data mesh. Let's talk about what we can do different. Sure.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What about education?
In what regards?
What are they doing in terms of education and training, changing how they're training and educating? Because you said country, I'm thinking like we have school systems here. I don't know why I thought about it, but it's clearly you must have your own education department or something.
We absolutely do. We actually run different education institutions that provide the skill sets that we need for the jobs that we have. So an example of one here in Georgia is Eisenhower. So it's Fort Eisenhower. It's got a cyber university there. It's got an IT university there, and they're building the latest greatest technologies down there, and they're teaching them and making professionals in each of those fields. And in cyber, I would say they're probably some of the best in the country.
Wow.
Because in my estimation, because I've had the ability to look at all the different cyber capabilities at different universities, I would say on some of the best schools I've looked at, DoD is probably 6 years ahead.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't... I hope so.
Well, think about it. So cyber attacks have been happening a long time, and nobody really cared about them as much as the Department of Defense did, because, those were state-sponsored hackers that are trying to get information out of our networks. So we've been fighting them a long time before it actually became kind of a thing.
Well, as you were talking about your early career, you were talking about, as things were coming over, launching EMPs, and I'm thinking, that had to be in the 70s.
It was in the 70s.
Right? In the 70s? I don't even think most people could have spelled EMP back then, and now it's like, oh, people are wondering about that. So it just shows how advanced.
Well, I think a lot of people think that the department's somehow behind, and in some cases there are spaces. But at one point, if you were a technologist, you went to the Department of Defense, and things like radar, GPS, things that we take for granted, it came from the Department of Defense.
So you got to see Solar Pulse today, right?
I did. I got the first brief on it.
What'd you think of those guys?
I thought it was phenomenal. I think the idea of taking something old like radar that's been around for a long time, and making a much higher fidelity of the reflection back, I think that could be really powerful and important. And I think DoD would be a good beneficiary to taking a look at that technology.
Yeah, I know they're talking to them, or they've been working on it, but it's such an impressive company, A
lot of promise.
Sir, in the time that I've been here, I've been very low. Some of the tech startup companies that come through here, I've noticed are functional experts, are very technical in their ability to come up with some viable product or capability. And in your experience with those companies at that same level of maturity, what in terms of business acumen and leadership principles, are there any guidance you would give that for those type companies where they might need, what are some principles of leadership that they might employ in that phase of immaturity? Because I've seen it with venture capitalists coming in, asking them questions about, well, why are you only selling it for that much? And their concept from a business model was not like, what do you mean for that much? Wouldn't I drive my customers away? No, you wouldn't. Any comments or thoughts on your experience with?
Oh my gosh. As far as on the leadership side of the house, don't do vaporware.
Yeah, right.
That's probably the number one.
Right.
And especially if you're working with government and DoD, do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, right.
And I see a lot of corporations, big corporations, that are dealing with DoD now that have forgotten that, and and it's hurting them, and they don't understand. It's like, because you're not doing what you said you were going to do.
Oh, right.
And so if you're a startup and you're just getting off the ground, your reputation is really all you have.
Yeah.
So make sure that you do what you say you can do. Make sure your demo's been worked through, and make sure that when you make that pitch, that everything's operational, working, and what you said you were going to do, you do.
More than Figma links?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But so character, obviously.
Yeah. Integrity.
Yeah. Doesn't really hit the. What were you thinking about with the pricing models and that sort of thing?
Yeah, just where they might need that guidance, on how. I mean,
I can even imagine, like, hey, I got a contract for a country.
Yeah.
What's the price?
That happens all the time.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of time they think, well, per seat. Okay, that per seat times 3.4 million. That's that's unaffordable. So the per seat is the probably the first conversation that we have, and they're like, but that's what we've been doing. It's like, well, this is a per seat cost. The per seat is many-fold than what you're used to. So the per seat cost doesn't scale.
Yeah.
What does scale, General?
Great technology that saves lives or makes an impact on a battlefield, that sells.
How do you deal with the wild entrepreneurs? Like, you've been around here now. You kind of see what's going on, and their hair's on fire most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where they're immature, where they have an idea they want to push, and really just understanding, are you even ready at a TRL level to even come in the room to potentially pitch someone like you, who is a credible leader in industry. And so it takes coaching, it takes mentorship, and not just in that technical functional area that they operate in, but in these other areas, leadership and business acumen.
Now you mentioned TRL.
Yeah.
You just rolled off your tongue. Which is technology readiness level, right? And what are those levels? 1 through
9. 1 is the concept, just a basic concept, and 9 is you've got a functional, viable product that's in production.
So,
Yeah.
I know what it is because I've been here.
Right.
But I sure as heck didn't know what before I joined ATDC and became part of this. So is that part of your vetting process to make sure you're not getting vaporware? Or you guys saying, what's your TRL? Is that I'm saying that because for our listeners, if you've got the company, go figure this out, right? What's your TRL? Because it probably matters, right?
Yeah, what's your TRL? And then for the cybersecurity model of maturity, if you're doing something in the cybersecurity space for DoD, you're obviously going to have not an insurmountable list of things to do to have a viable product, but you're going to need an advocate. You're going to need an advocate like General Lynn, or someone who can coach and bring you along that path to get you there. And it does look daunting for some, particularly the startups who are not, I don't have a cybersecurity staff. You want me to do 50, 60 pages of something, and I don't even have an expert to do that, but there are companies out there who can help them do that, and that's why having a sponsor or an advocate is key, and that's, I think, why this talk is important.
It's interesting. You say that. I wish I knew the name of the company, but there's a venture capitalist here called Mike. His name's Mike Dowdle, Circadian Ventures. And did you meet them? Do you still have the?
Yeah, I do. I've met him, and he's already linked me up with a few of his cyber companies.
Because they invested in a company that actually uses AI to write those documents.
Right.
What a great application, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You don't need a staff of 10 anymore. Just 10 seconds and the knowledge of that. I'm gonna have to look up that company. We'll put it in the notes at some point because it's really a great company. So.
Yeah.
Okay. What? So you did the stuff in the military, and then you went into the private sector.
Correct.
Were you doing it concurrently, or how did that work?
No. So I actually am a retirement failure. So I thought I was going to retire.
We call it an encore career.
So I thought I was going to retire, and I did that for a couple months. I said I just can't do this anymore. And one of the CEOs, who's a friend of mine, CEO for Cisco, and I were talking. We were having breakfast. And he said, well, why don't you come work for me? And I said, okay. Well, yeah. He said, what are you thinking? He goes, what do you want to do? I said, well, most people don't know this, but, throughout my military career, I was building, new technologies like high-speed multiplexing card. I was working to help build, some software and top-secret cell phones and, a bunch of different stuff. And I really enjoyed that. It was just kind of a side gig.
The innovation piece.
Yeah, the innovation piece. And I said, that's what I'd like to do. And he said, well, I know a couple engineers that you could work with. And so I finally got to work with a guy named Dave Ward. He was very innovative. And we created an innovation shop, and we started building new technologies. And I was lucky because I got to lead with one of my inventions.
Interesting.
Which was is to make passwords go away. It was a problem I've never really liked.
To make passwords
go away. So it was continuous multi-factor authentication. So everything a device knows about you, it would ingest that into a machine that would know it's you. So you would just use a machine as normal and make captcha go away.
We're going to have to hook you up with Vouch.io. Do you know those guys?
No.
Yeah, interesting. I need to do that. I hope Anthony Maley comes today because he's got an immutable identification that sounds similar, but I bet he'd love to compare some notes to that.
But what a job! And then we just started building new technologies. We weren't limited at all. So we looked at augmented reality. Mm-hmm. We worked with drones. We worked with obviously mine and just multiple ones. And within our group, we had some 400 kind of startups in different
really
varieties.
You had like 400 companies. Like you're just.
I wouldn't say 400 companies. I had 400 ideas at different stages. Okay. Different stages of development.
Man, did I make that leap quick?
Yeah. There've been a lot of companies. Yeah.
But essentially the idea was great. So there's innovation. It's kind of spurring the idea. They're working on this stuff.
Right. And you're working with all the innovation groups from all the major companies you've heard of.
Yeah.
We're working with all of them. So we're able to see what they're doing. We're telling what we're doing. does this work for you? Because it sounds like something would be good for you.
And you're doing that now, or you went to the retirement a second time?
Well, yeah, then I went to retirement for the second time, and so then the guys either from the corporate world would call me and say, "Hey, Al,
Special project?
yeah, how'd you like to come help us with this?" And I was like, "No, I'm retired again," and they go, "But you said if I ever needed help." It's like, I did say that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Awesome.
So I ended up creating an LLC, Leading Innovators and Leaders, and so that's what I do now.
So that's your side hustle?
Yeah. So now I go help either. It's kind of either a startup, like truly a startup, or it's a multinational company. So I don't have anything really in the middle, but it's a blast.
So you're like a fractional chief, do what it takes kind of guy?
That's it.
Oh man, I love that. Is that fun?
It is fun.
Well, what's the best part about that?
Well, the best part's always helping people.
Yeah.
And since you're used to working with young people, I don't know if most of the people in the military are, their average age is around 22 or something like that.
Okay.
So you're working with young people all the time, so it feels like you're almost like you're back in uniform.
Yeah.
Working with people who are trying to solve a hard problem and make a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, you look like you could put the uniform back on and go back out there,
You never know.
Um,
Hopefully I won't have to, though. There's plenty of great people behind me. The guy that replaced me is a guy named General Paul Stanton. Mm-hmm. And you were asking about, when you go pitch to these guys.
Yeah.
He's a PhD in data science. He's like a data scientist. So the guys that you're talking to,
They know their stuff.
They know their stuff, and they want you to succeed.
Yeah, I love it. What's one last piece of advice, or what should we pass on to these entrepreneurs who are listening?
I would say that going and doing business with the DoD is really good for business. I mean, just pure business. Mm-hmm. So when the market is having a problem and there's a downturn in the market, if you're in the government space, that's pretty steady once you get in it. So you want to work on both sides. You don't want to just work in one or the other. You want to work on both sides. So when business is bad on one side, it tends to be better in the DoD side because something's happening in the world.
Interesting. I never thought about it. It's sort of like you got your long game going and you got your grind going. So play the long game with the DoD. You land that stuff. That long game keeps going, and that is really great advice. So, man, this flew by quick. I don't even know. General Lynn, thank you.
Oh, it was an honor to be here. I think this is great what you're doing. Yeah, making a difference in the world. This is phenomenal.
And I get to work with General Norris. I mean,
he's a good dude.
Oh, heck yeah, he's good. Like, the only thing I don't want to do is run against him, because like I've seen, like he's still doing triathlons and stuff like that, But we decided we were going to team up at some point.
We'd do a little relay, maybe.
Yeah, a little relay. I'm gonna hold the Finnish flag. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome.
It was an honor. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the ATDC podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, and share or connect wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to follow us on social media. Our handle is @ATDC on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram.